My name is Stephen Brimson Lewis. I'm the designer for Richard II. I've designed the scenery, the set and the costumes. The overall kind of concept, if you like, for the production really grew out of a kind of response to the space as much as anything else, the theatre itself. It's such a unique space in that the actors are thrust right into the centre of the building and right amongst the audience. On first glance, it's quite tricky to design for that because obviously you can't have pieces of scenery where it'll block the sightlines for the audience. And particularly, Greg wanted to exploit the height that we have in the RST and indeed the depth of it. So it was a technical process, really, seeing what's the best place an actor can be for each moment of the story. And then out of that came a set. It seemed to us, let's try and find a look for the play that takes you back in history to a world where you believe these characters would exist. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an exercise in historical accuracy by recreating a museum-perfect piece of history live on stage. That's not important. What's important is telling the story in the clearest possible way. By nature, one's own taste in these things comes through, some of which you're in control of and some of which you're not in control of. A certain sense, a certain aesthetic. I know that my aesthetic now, over the years, is about a more stripped back. I hate to use the word purist, but there's a sort of, I just don't like it when there's lots of stuff that gets in the way. It's that thing about competing with the story and competing with the actors, and I'm acutely aware of that. It's not a piece where you can celebrate technology. For me, that would get in the way of the story as well. So that technology has to work in a very subtle way in order to transform the space, and indeed being able to lift a massive section of the floor, seemingly to defy gravity and open up with no external source at all, meant a very serious amount of automation to work under the floor. If you go under the stage now, you'll see that there's an awful lot of machinery that has been brought in just for this production. I'm particularly passionate about the use of light and the use of projection, and my work with Tim Mitchell over the years has meant that we too have developed a kind of language for that, where you can change a location by a lighting cue as quick as possible. You don't have to wait for a piece of scenery to fly in and fly out. But I didn't want a sort of two-dimensional cutout thing. I wanted a sense of real three-dimensional depth. And what projecting on chain has given us is an ability for actors to appear to be in the projection as well as standing in front of it. The costumes, of course, are so important in terms of storytelling and, more importantly, allowing the audience to just make sense of who's who in this story, particularly in a story where almost everyone in this story is of extraordinarily high status. But nonetheless, one still has to explain to an audience of who they are and where they are in terms of the hierarchy and who's fighting for the throne. For me, it was the distinction between Richard's reign and Henry's reign. There's a line in the play where Richard talks of his gay apparel and clearly enjoys fashion, enjoys clothes and enjoys textures and colours. And Henry clearly isn't a man where that's so important at all. Just in terms of pure personality from the storytelling, that's a key kind of clue. We call them the cricket team and the rugby team. So Richard's cricket team have a certain finesse to how they wear clothes and a certain fine line, and it's all about height and an extended sort of Gothic architecture of clothes, whereas Henry's is much more like other Henrys in history, much squarer, much stockier, much earthier. It's a huge team of people who help me develop that. It's not something you just come in with a piece of cardboard, present and walk away. It's been a long process from the cardboard model all the way through to the finished design.